different language.
Okay, we are going back to Gentle and Lowly after taking a week off,
Or two.
or two, depending on when the other one comes out. It's a book called The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers, and we're going through one chapter a week. Right now we're in chapter 12, which is titled A Tender Friend. And I quote Matthew 11, verse 19, which is on the top of the chapter, a friend of tax collectors and sinners.
Halfway through the book. This book is a half a year worth of podcasts, by the way. I just put that together in my
Yeah,
brain.
we'll have to think through that next time we decide
Pick
something.
23 chapters.
I actually talked to Marie last night
Okay.
about reading through that book, and she's just like,
Oh, even in public.
oh yeah, she's
Okay.
just
Well, at least
like,
she's consistent.
would you have been taught that Jesus is your friend growing up?
No.
Do you think of him now as your friend?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think the reason was because I think I was taught that obviously Jesus is a friend to those that are trusting in him. And the bulk of what I heard growing up was not speaking to those that were Christians, right? It was assuming that most people were not, or at least that's my perception. And to be fair, that may have been, it probably was true. It was for sure true when I was in my Bible class in middle school, let's say, right? I'm assuming a lot, but based on, my experience. But
I think it's interesting. This chapter starts out talking about how in present day modern world, there's very little, a huge lack of male friends and male friendships and being completely open with each other. And how that makes it hard for us to even imagine that Christ could be our friend. Because we have that lack of example, just like, our example of God the Father is our own dads and things like that. And I thought that was interesting. And then also how that it's Jesus got accused by people of being a friend of tax collectors and sinners. That is a friend of the most despicable kinds of sinners known in that culture. But it wasn't his disciples that called him that. It was his antagonists that called him that, who most clearly perceive who he is. And the crowds called him a friend of sinners as an indictment. And I thought that was interesting as well, how it wasn't like they could see in his actions that he was a friend to the outcasts of the society, of the worst people. And I think that's good to meditate on and think about, as I often find myself in that spot. I'm like, man, and seeing that's who Christ's heart goes out to, and who he got accused to be a friend of sinners.
I think the reason that we know that most of us don't feel this way is that often people, when they do the wrong things or they really screw up, they don't run to God. They try to hide from him, right? I mean, Adam and Eve did that in the beginning, and I think we still do that today, right? Where when we have horrible thoughts or we do the wrong thing or really, really screw up, we don't cry out to God and ask him to forgive us necessarily right away. We just try to run, or at least I do. Maybe I'm.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's.
I mean, one of the quotes here says, Most of us admit that even with our best friends, we don't feel fully comfortable divulging everything about our lives. We like them and even love them and go on vacation with them and sing their praises to others, but we don't really, at the deepest heart level, entrust ourselves to them. Even in many of our marriages, we have, or our friends of sort, but we haven't gotten naked in a soul the way we have in a body.
So I had that underlined too, and I put Freedom Session Step 5 because that's what Freedom Session Step 5 is. It's the fifth step in the 12 steps, is to kind of share everything about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's fascinating when you go to a grad and somebody will share, I shared every last part of me and the person still cared for me, and just how special that is, right? And like you say, we often might not even have that with our spouse. How sad is that, right? Where it's like, here's the person that you're literally naked with, and it's like, oh, no, but they don't actually fully know you, right? So,
I think the biggest reason for that is not necessarily because they're not potentially a good friend, but we're not comfortable in our own skin, right? We don't like ourselves. Yeah, there's one part of it that I think is good to mention as well, because often when the friendship of Jesus is talked about, we feel like we're like being disrespectful, or we humanize
too
casual, or humanize him too much. So, and it talks about that. So it says we should not overly domesticate Jesus here. He is not just any friend. A few chapters earlier in Revelation, we see a depiction of Christ so overwhelming to John that he falls down immobilized. But neither should we dilute the humanness, the sheer relational desire, clearly present in these words from the mouth of the risen Christ himself. He isn't waiting for you to trigger his heart. He is already standing at the door, knocking, wanting to come into you. So what's our job? Our duty, says Sibbs, which is Richard Sibbs, I believe, is to accept of Christ's inviting of us. What will we do for him if we will not feast with him? If we, like, we're always thinking about, like, the more stuff we need to go do with for Jesus or for God. And so, but he's
The
asking
Mary Martha convert.
yeah, like if we won't even feast with him and enjoy him and accept his love for us. So.
Yeah. Another part that I had starred was on page 120, and it was just at the top there. It would be cruel to suggest that human friendship is irrelevant once one has been befriended by Christ. God made us for fellowship, for union of heart with other people. Everyone gets lonely, including introverts, it says. And it's fascinating. I had a meal with a guy very recently, and very lonely and just really sad, like emotionally lonely, right? And I'm thinking, I said to Marie afterwards, I said, like, nobody could be farther from what I am than this person, right? Where it's just like, but like, it's important. And I think, you know, we often go, I think, into victim mentality. People that are lonely, or people that, you know, they often think it's like, no, I got where I am by putting myself out there and being somewhat uncomfortable at times, or, you know, there are things we can do. And if we can always find an excuse to not do things, like anybody can, like even the people that are doing everything have all the excuses, typically often have the same excuses as the person that's living by themselves. So I just feel like, community is important.
Yeah. So before you went to a freedom session in 2016, I'm not sure how healthy you were before that, but like, how open would you have been with other people?
More open than most people, but not open about everything. You know, there would have been little parts of my life. I think that's really what it comes down to. Even guys that I know now that are amazing people. There's a lot of really solid people. It's amazing how people keep a little part of their life, that little piece of secret stuff going on or something that they're struggling with it by themselves. And in many other ways, they're probably doing really well, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because the devil just uses that. Like you know you're a fraud, and he knows it, and he uses it. And that's how it was for me. It was like, you know, you go to church, I go to church and just feel like a total fraud, like feel like such a hypocrite, right? And so that's the beautiful thing. All of a sudden, there's so much power lost by Satan when we are fully known by somebody, right? He can no longer hold that.
I think it's also especially not even what we're doing, but what we're thinking, because everyone has crazy thoughts, like thoughts that
you and I for sure have crazier thoughts than others, but no, everybody does. That's totally true.
Like thoughts you don't want to have. Yeah. And if you just
really dark thoughts, even some moms, dads, I hear that sometimes, and I'm like, no, that's just, we're human. We're going to sin.
That's right. Yeah. But to then share those, that's when they lose their power. Like grab the phone, hop on the phone and be like, hey, I'm thinking these crazy things. Like all of a sudden.
And because everybody, as a general rule, doesn't share that, we would assume we're the only ones, right? That's pretty normal. Yeah. Anyways, good chapter.
Imposter syndrome. Struggle with that? Hey guys, if you enjoyed that episode and were blessed by it, would you be willing to support the show? That would help a lot in creating more content, improving the quality of the content, putting the production value, getting more guests on, and me being able to spend more time and energy towards it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click up here and it'll take you to a support page. But you can also subscribe to the podcast by clicking over here and doing that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.